Hi, I'm Kat.
And I'm Emma.
And thank you for joining us. Welcome back to the Dead Parent Club podcast.
Each week, we're going to be talking about what it's like to be members of the Dead Parent Club and also chatting to brilliant guests about their grieving journeys.
We'll also be hearing from people far more qualified than us that can give you some top advice on navigating this new normal.
So welcome everyone to the Dead Parent Club.
Now, today we are joined by rapper, author and broadcaster Guvna B. Isaac lost his father very unexpectedly in 2017 and noticed how toxic masculinity affected his ability to grieve openly.
He wrote a book about his own experience of grief called Unspoken. And like us, he's entered into the world of podcasting about it.
Hi, Isaac, and welcome to the podcast. And thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks for having me, man. That was a pretty slick intro. I'm very impressed.
Seasoned professionals.
Yay,
well, she is.
Off to a good start. I mean, if I'm the professional amongst us, there's no hope, is there? Isaac, let's start from the beginning, shall we? What was it like for you growing up in your family?
It was cool. I actually had quite a good upbringing. I felt my parents are Ghanaian. They came over to England in the early 20s, had me and my younger brother. I think they struggled a little bit financially. Both had a couple of jobs at a time. We grew up on a council estate, kind of working class area. But in terms of my experience as a child, I never ever felt like I lacked anything. Always had food on the table, bed to sleep in. Didn't have the latest trainers or tracksuits or whatever, but I was really, really happy. And it wasn't actually till I got a lot older that I realized, oh, my parents were actually struggling quite a bit, but they never ever, put that burden on me. So yeah, I had a great upbringing, good relationship with my parents. My mum was a lot more vocal than my dad, but I never doubted that either of them loved me. My dad only spoke to me when he was telling me to do something or telling me off, but he's a good guy, man. And your mum was great as well. So yeah, I love my upbringing.
So then, obviously, your dad passed in 2017. So can you kind of give us a sort of brief introduction to what happened and basically the kind of how your life changed straight after that?
Yeah, sure. So my dad basically started coughing in his sleep, and my mum said that it didn't really feel right or sound right. So she told him to go to the doctors, and he was quite reluctant because he's, the kind of guy that's like, nah, I don't go to doctors, don't go to the GP, I'm all right, I'm probably just a bit tired and that kind of stuff. But I stayed there for a few days, and so he went to the doctors. They couldn't really find out what it was, so they referred him to the hospital. He got checked over, and this is all in a space of like 3 days. And as he's walking out of the hospital, he kind of feels really faint, and so they keep him in for longer, and his condition basically started to deteriorate quite rapidly. And a few days later, he passed away. And it wasn't until after they did the post-mortem and they had done some initial tests and the results came back that they realized he had cancer. It was called T-cell lymphoma, a cancer of the blood, but a really aggressive form. And that's what he passed away from. He could have had it for like a few weeks, could have been a few months, but he wasn't aware that he had it. And knowing my dad, even if he felt like a bit tired or not right, he probably just went for a nap and just made himself feel all right and kind of went back to work and stuff like that. But yeah, he passed away after a really short battle with cancer. And yeah, it was super unexpected. I hadn't really lost anyone that close to me. So obviously I live with him, saw him every day, that kind of stuff. I'd lost like a few friends earlier on in life to like youth violence, and my grandma and stuff, she was in Ghana, so there's like an element of distance there. But because it was my dad, I think it just knocked me for six and didn't really know how to deal with it other than what I've been taught from young, and that's just you get on with it, stiff upper lip and keep it moving. But it didn't really last very long before I had a bit of a breakdown.
How old were you at this point, Isaac?
I was 27 when my dad passed away.
Yeah. So kind of being told to have that kind of stiff upper lip and get on with it, that's quite different to how people traditionally grieve, isn't it, in Ghanaian culture?
Yeah, in a way. I don't think it's different to how the men are kind of conditioned to grieve. At funerals and stuff, women are very like vocal and stuff, and almost it's accepted if they're emotional or visibly crying and stuff like that. And I think the guys are okay to do that, but there's definitely like an expectation that you just got to be strong. Do you know what I mean? These things happen. You got to be strong for the people around you that you still have left, and that kind of stuff. There was loads of people around my house, and I think like in Ghanaian culture, you're never left alone, which is a good thing. Can be overwhelming sometimes, but it is a good thing. But yeah, generally there is an expectation like that the guy has to be strong, and I'm the eldest child as well, and there's an additional expectation on being the eldest child, because you kind of just assume responsibility after you've lost like someone like your dad. You know what I mean?
And obviously, with this stiff upper lip, it's only so long really that it can be sustained until it starts having an impact on your mental health, I'd imagine. And you mentioned, Isaac, how you coped with it then. How did you cope with the loss of your dad? What kind of things did you turn to?
I turned to drink and basically distancing myself from the people that really loved me, because it felt too overwhelming. Like everyone was like always asking me if I was okay, and they wanted to be there for me, but I didn't know how I wanted them to be there for me. So people like my mum, people like my wife, because with my wife, like if she's going through something, she likes people to be like all up in her space, giving her cuddles, all that kind of stuff, like asking her if she's all right. But with me, I just like people to leave me alone. So if she's in the house, just like rubbing my back, checking them I'm okay and stuff, and I'm just like, oh, can you get off me? Like, obviously I didn't say it, I was just thinking out my head, because I just wanted my space. So I think I just distanced myself from the people that love me, because I wanted to isolate, and I turned to a lot of alcohol just to try and help me sleep and numb the pain a little bit. And it was actually about 3 months after my dad passed away where I took the opportunity to go on tour in America, because I just wanted to get out of England for a bit. And I remember on the last tour date, we was in California, and I woke up feeling really, really heavy, which is actually quite rare for me. And then that's when I started to get like mental health flags, maybe something's not right. And so I walked to the beach, even though I can't swim, but I just went to the beach anyway because I was in California. And I just burst into tears. And that was the first time that I had cried for years and years and years. But after I cried, I just felt this freedom that I hadn't felt in a long, long time. And I think that was just like the alarm bell of, okay, maybe it's okay to show your emotions and let it out.
So what did you do at that point then, when you kind of realised like, maybe the way that I'm handling this isn't the best for me? What happened after that? Did you seek out professional help? Did you kind of return to your family and start having those sort of open conversations with them?
Yeah, I think the first thing I did when I got back was speak to my family, like my mum, my wife, my little brother. And I was like, look, I know I've distanced myself, and I've recognized that's probably not the best way to deal with my emotions long term. And I want to be in a position where I can practice being honest with you lot, because I know you love me. And that was actually really hard for me, because I'm like an internal processor. I'm an undersharer. And so a way for me to move forward, I realized that I had to start sharing, and I had to start practicing vulnerability. So I just practiced like sharing what was on my heart. And then in addition to that, I started counselling. My first counsellor was actually terrible. I should even want to put a name out there in a website so no one goes, but I won't do that. But I went to another one and they were great. So counselling.
People say it's like dating though, right? Counselling, like it's not, you have to like kiss plenty of frogs to find the right one. I think that's so true.
Yeah, that's actually a good way to look at it. I didn't do too badly then, because my second one was
the one.
Yeah, and that was like a massive help, man. And then another thing as well is my faith. I think like my parents are Christians anyway, so we grew up like with a lot of faith. But when my dad passed away, I just felt like really far from the faith, because I'm like, well, I'm actually quite angry at God, and if I was to pray, I would just pray like really angry prayers and stuff. And then my mate told me, then why don't you just try and pray like angry prayers and say, God, why have you done this? And I started to do that, and it actually made me feel a bit better. So yeah, counselling was a big help, faith was, and yeah, just practicing sharing stuff with people in my life that were close to me.
I had a similar kind of experience with faith, because I was brought up in like a very Christian household, and as a teenager, did the classic thing of just like, don't want to do that. That's not me, blah, blah, blah. And then when my mum died, I was away at uni, and somebody who became a really close friend of mine was a girl that worked locally and went to a local church. And because of her, I started getting back into going to church. And like ever since then, I've found a real appreciation for that again. And I think when some people say, you know, how can a God be real when these terrible things happen? But actually that faith provides so much comfort to people in actually the darkest times. So I think it is such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and I think like the church I grew up in, you can never really doubt God or like ask questions. And so I thought, well, if I haven't got anything nice to say, I'm not going to say anything at all. But I've learned that like if he says he's as big as he is, then you should be able to deal with my little questions and my little doubts and stuff. And the massive thing for me is perspective. So like every Father's Day, I don't know why, like, but I do know why, it's because I miss him. But every Father's Day, birthday, I get really upset because it feels like he's getting further and further away. But then with my faith perspective, I'm like, actually, well, if heaven's real and I believe he's up there, then I'm actually getting closer and closer to seeing him again every year.
Oh, wow, I love that.
Yeah, that's been a massive part.
Really like that way of looking at it. And also, Isaac, you know, all the kind of coping mechanisms that you spoke about there are they're as outward as they are inward. You know, your faith, talking about it and just sharing are all the kind of things that people would say are going to help you ultimately in this grieving process once you've internally processed things, to be able to share those. And writing has been a part of that for you, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Well, and you should have been my counsellor. But yeah, writing was a big one. It was because I'm not good at communicating just in like normal like speaking to people. I find that writing for me is like, it's like really cathartic, because like the family I grew up in, we didn't like sit around the table at 7:30 every night, have dinner together and talk about our day. So I didn't have all that practice. And so I really struggle communicating how I feel. But when I start writing lyrics, it just seems to come out in like a really creative way, and it just seems to flow, and it helps me process my own feelings. And it's obviously functional in the sense that it helps other people as well that might hear the music or whatever. But it's been massive for me, man. Huge.
It's such a paradox, isn't it? How you can perceive yourself as somebody who doesn't like to open up, doesn't like talking about things, but you can actually bear all in music. And obviously you've written the book as well, haven't you, Unspoken?
Yeah. Do you know, I think it is, you know, when you have a conversation with someone, and you kind of plan what you're about to say, and then the other person just says something completely that throws you off, and you've got to think of what you've got. Like, I don't like being interrupted when I'm processing my feelings. When I'm rapping and I'm making music, it's like completely uninterrupted. No one can tell me to stop, no one can sway me in a different direction. And I think that's what's beautiful about it. And I think the book was just an extension of that, because there's only so much. My dad passed away, you can get into a 3-minute song, you know what I mean? But with a book, you can go into all kinds of different angles and different topics and ways that it impacted me.
Before I go into that, I just wanted to share something really funny that you just reminded me of that my dad said. So since my mum's died, my dad relied on my mum a lot for like social occasions. My mum was the chatty one, my dad was the kind of like reserved one. And he started when he's like going on like a Zoom call or having a phone call with somebody that's planned, he'll write notes on his phone of topics that he wants to like talk to them about and ask them about.
That's so cute.
He said,
"Please,
it's
can I help you, Dad?"
That is very cute.
because he gets quite like nervous and he'll forget. So he actually has like a notes of what to do. So maybe you can do that, you know, and you can plan for conversations.
I've got notes for this call actually that I've been No, I'm joking, but yeah, that's sweet.
Yeah, it made me laugh.
That is very, very cute. Also, any notes, if you did have any, Isaac, could end up getting thrown out with the way this conversation goes anyway. Do you kind of, when you cast your mind back across your grieving journey so far, Isaac, do you feel like a different person, or do you feel like the same person, but your approach has changed? If there are differences, what are they? I'm interested to know.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I feel like I'm the same person, but I didn't know who I was. Like, I didn't know this version of myself. Because one thing, like all my friends used to say to me, when he died, oh, Isaac, like you're acting really out of character, like you're drinking a lot and you're like a lot more of an angry person and stuff. But I actually have a different perspective because I feel like in life, it's so easy to be like a good person with like no addictions and stuff when life's going your way. Like if life's amazing, it doesn't really challenge you. But I think you actually reveal like your true self or the true, like, I don't know, capabilities of like your worst self when you go through tough times. Mm-hmm. So I actually think my dad passing away revealed like what I was really like when like, I don't know if I can swear, but like
go for your life.
Knock yourself up.
Yeah, like what I'm actually like when shit hits the fan. That's the real me. Because like when life's amazing, that's not really the real me. That's just like the perfect me that's not really being challenged. And so, yeah, I think in answer to your question, I found like the real me, like my true self. And I tried to improve that person, like who I am when life doesn't go my way and when things are a bit dark, like challenging myself to be the best I can be in those situations.
It's character, isn't it? It is character, you're right. And that really resonates.
Character building.
No, yeah, but it actually is because the thing is, it's when you're forced to look inside yourself and dig deep and you have these stark moments of going, who the fuck am I? What am I doing? What is my life? What is my purpose? And when you're asking yourself such huge questions, it can lead you in all sorts of it can lead you down dark paths and that can eventually guide you to great places, like as you've experienced, Isaac. How much of a role would you say toxic masculinity has played so far in your grieving journey?
Yeah, it was massive at the start because I think I was conditioned by like being the eldest child and knowing that I had to make sure everyone else was all right. So don't share my feelings. Also, growing up on a council estate, you're like, no one wants to be a victim. So don't be vulnerable because your life won't be great if you're vulnerable. Just being a child of a Ghanaian like immigrants, do you know what I mean? My parents came over here for a better life. So you ain't got time to like worry about your feelings and your emotions. Like we're too busy trying to further ourselves. All those kind of things came into play. But I think when I started crying on that beach that time, it just kind of made me realize that why am I putting the pressure on myself to be this strong man? And, you know, a lot of guys say to me, oh, what's wrong with like toxic masculinity or whatever? And I don't think there's anything wrong with being strong. That's not what I'm saying. I don't even think there's anything wrong with like not really crying. If you're not a crier, not everyone's a crier, but I just think when your mind and your body is telling you to be vulnerable or to let something out or to cry, and you force yourself not to do that because you're trying to be this like strong man of all the bravado and stuff, then that's when it becomes a problem. That's when it becomes detrimental to your mental health. But yeah, man, if your mind and your body's like, yeah, I'm fine not crying, then cool. But I think for me, everything within me was saying, let it out, like just let it out. And I was fighting against it. And so I just had to do it. And I think that's how I played a part.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's definitely where toxic masculinity comes into play. It's not a case of every single man has to cry and every single man has to show his emotions. It is, you know, it's the case of accepting those feelings if you're getting them and not feeling conditioned or like society expects you not to express those emotions. Yeah. But have you had many people contacting you who have kind of basically just like admiring your stance on that and the way that you're speaking up about that, especially with grief?
Yeah, I actually couldn't believe how many people like got in touch, just even like fans on social media, right down to my close friends, opening up. Like I've known these people for like over 20 years and they've just started opening up about their life and stuff that they've been struggling with and, you know, grief stories. And we had this one thing. So a few of us lost a friend at about 15 years old on our estate. He got stabbed. And at the time, because we were just young, obviously everyone was hurt, but the culture of the estate is you just kind of move on. And then it got brought up after my book came out. And most of my friends were like, yeah, I went home that night and I was crying my eyes out and it was really hard to deal with. But I felt like I couldn't tell anyone. And we kind of talked about it again and stuff with fresh eyes and fresh perspective. And it was beautiful. And yeah, I was surprised with the feedback because I didn't put out the book because I thought, oh, I'm going to be like some role model or I'm going to be that person for masculinity. I just did it because I thought it could help a few people and it was good for me. So the fact that people are like, yo, this has like changed my life and this has helped me talk to my parents and restore some of my relationships and speak about stuff that I've never spoke about and go to counselling and that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's been incredible.
And you mentioned, Isaac, that you were the oldest child. Have have your family and the way they grieve around you, has that changed since you have, become more open about your grief?
Yeah, do you know what's so mad about that question? Yeah. So last night, basically, long story, my cousin's a actress. She won 2 BAFTAs yesterday. She's called Michaela Cole, but she had like a little after party. Cheers. I don't know why I'm saying thank you. I didn't win. But,
taking it for the family. Yeah, go on.
So we had like a little family after party last night, and my brother's obviously drunk, yeah. And he's put his arm around me, and he's doing the, bruv, I love you, man. Do you know what I mean? I don't say it enough, but I flipping love you. I'm not gonna lie, like when Dad died, I felt a bit weird because as the eldest, everyone was coming up to you and asking you if you're all right, and do you know what I mean? What should they do and that kind of stuff? And I felt like a bit forgotten about, but I just thank you that you protected me in that time. And I just want to say I love you and that kind of stuff. So it's mad, man, because I think my family and stuff, we look back at that time. Sometimes we're upset, sometimes we're happy, sometimes we laugh, sometimes we smile. But ultimately, it's brought everyone closer together and everyone's a lot more open with each other. So that's a beautiful thing.
It really, really is. That was, even hearing you talk about that just felt warm. It was lovely to listen to. Why do you think it sounds like a pretty obvious answer this, but why do you think it is so important for women, of course, but men in particular, Isaac, to be open about their feelings if they're weighing heavy on them?
Yeah. So 2 answers come to mind straight away. And the first one is, it's actually beneficial for that person, for that man. Like, this is not just something like, oh, look what I've learned. It's toxic masculinity. I'm going to impress you with all my knowledge. It's not that at all. It's just, I actually care about men embracing their feelings, feeling all the things, because it makes for a more fulfilling life for them. It makes for healthier, mental health for them, which is always a good thing. And then the second thing is, my mum has huge anxiety and I think it's from picking up the pieces during like her whole marriage and her whole parenthood, because me, my dad, my brother didn't talk. So she had to carry all of the emotional baggage for everyone. And that's just not healthy. So she's always wondering, I wonder if they're all right. They don't talk, or what if they're going through something crazy deep and I don't know about it? And it's made her a really anxious person. So I think for men, it's not only beneficial for themselves, but I actually think we take away a lot of the burden from women as well. Like, women shouldn't have to go through society just carrying emotional baggage for men, because they've got their own stuff to deal with. Do you know what I'm saying? So I think healthier men just equals like healthier women, healthier society in general.
Isaac, you said that I should have been your counsellor. Can you be mine? Because
that's one of the most insightful things I've ever heard about this topic.
You've just blown me away, because I've never thought. I am a woman and I am guilty of carrying a lot of emotional baggage for those around me. And I have done that for many years, completely, just almost dutifully, just assuming that role. And to hear a man speak about that and look at it not only from a male perspective, but to think about women and how that might put a strain on them, that's changed my perspective. You have just, in that one moment, changed my perspective. I've never thought about that. So thank you.
It just makes everybody better. Just more open conversations, more open people just makes everything better.
Yeah. And I think a lot of, like, as with, and you'll have probably found this as well, Isaac, there's a lot of things in society that really, we've just assumed that that's just what happens over an extended period of time, long before we were ever even here. And it's the same thing that happens when you're grieving a loved one, like a parent, is you have to unlearn a lot of what you've been quite often subconsciously taught growing up. We have to unlearn a lot of those things in order to live a far more fulfilled life. And you strike me as the kind of person that has invested a lot of time to unlearn a lot of things, hence why you have gone down this road. And I don't believe this is the end of your journey by any stretch of the imagination, but my God, like, you're in a great place now, it seems.
Yeah, I am. But I think the key thing to unlearning is I've spent, 30 years of my life being one way. And so I might walk out of a counselling session feeling like 10 stone lighter and think, right, this is how I'm going to approach life now. But after 2 weeks, I'm going to slip back into my usual routine and patterns because that's all I know. So unlearning is like a constant process. And I'm never, ever going to arrive at the place of, right, now I've got it all worked out. Now I'm the perfect communicator. And now my mental health is great. It's going to be riding the waves. And I've got to be consistently, just open to, right, I might slip back in sometimes, but you fall down, you get back up again and you keep going, It's about the journey rather than the destination, I think.
You're right. A lot of us spend, I feel like we're getting really deep here and I am absolutely here for it, guys. A lot of us spend a lot of time, like, we work on our work, for example, on our careers. If we're pursuing that, we work on a lot of external things, but actually the best thing you can work on, and I think grief, losing a loved one at any age anyway, really helps give you that perspective of going, I have to live with me for the rest of however long my life is. So it's me that has to dig deep, work out who I am and what I really want in this world.
Yeah, 100%. I was trying to think of something really smart to say off the back of that, but I just agree with everything.
Well, it's something we've learned from doing this podcast, isn't it, Emma? Like, you can have one of the most traumatic experiences of your life, but it's amazing how it can give you that perspective and change you in such a positive way. Like the way that you're able to approach life now, Isaac, and obviously teach those learnings to your own children, like that just creates a better generation as the years go on. And like, you've had a really crappy time, like it is unbelievably shit, but being able to pass those learnings on, I think, is one of the most beautiful things. Like I can't wait to teach my children to kind of live just more honestly, like about yourself. Like I think it's going to be amazing.
That's it. I couldn't agree more. And it feels so weird, isn't it? Because you're like, actually, that was such a horrible time. How can anything positive come out of that? But to be real, something positive has come out. I'm a stronger person, and I would obviously have my dad back in an instant if I could, but I can't. And at least, like I've got a son now. He's 18 months old, like lockdown baby, and I'm gonna take on some things that I've learned and make sure that he doesn't. Well, he's just a better communicator, and he's a bit more honest about his feelings than I am, than I was.
Is it possible to get our parents back and keep this perspective that we've got going on? Because that would be great.
That'd be ideal.
But how, it's exactly that. You become your most authentic self, I think. And it is wonderful. I'm sure that your dad would be extremely content knowing that the lessons you've learned through the loss of him have allowed you probably in many ways to be a better dad for your son.
Yeah. 100%. He'd love that. And I think that's the goal, isn't it? Like he wanted me to be better than he was in all ways, and I want my son to be better than I am. And I think one thing I've picked up is just creating that space for my son. Like we didn't have a lot of space when I was growing up, space to talk, space around a dinner table, space just in the front room having a conversation. There was always something on, like the TV's on or the radio's on or someone's talking about something random or an auntie and an uncle's around and that. So for my son, man, I was just trying to, he's only 18 months, so he's just like, can't even talk yet, leave me alone. Just trying to create more space for that to happen.
You're sat in front of him like, tell me how you feel. He's just like throwing bricks.
Can he come and join us on the podcast? Is that all right?
You can have him anytime you want. He's a nightmare.
Isaac, what would you say to anybody, but particularly a young man who might have just experienced a loss now?
Yeah. I'd say don't be ashamed to feel everything. So if you've lost someone close to you and you want to cry, don't be ashamed to feel that. Or if you've lost someone close to you and everyone around you is crying, but all you can do is laugh because you're thinking of all the good times, don't be ashamed to feel that either. Like, don't feel guilty to feel that. Feel everything. And then the other thing I'd say is, I always say this thing, like, you got to look after the puddles before they turn into floods. So if you recognize that you're feeling low, like, pay attention to that and try your best to equip yourselves with the tools to do that, whether it's, counseling or speaking to friends and that kind of stuff. Because if you bury it, it just turns into something way bigger to deal with later on down the line. So yeah.
Very wise words.
Very good advice. Go on, Kat, sorry.
Well, before we ask you our final question, and one of our most favourite. I just wanted to quickly touch on your podcast, because obviously you've written a book, you've kind of talked about your experience with grief and loss in your music, but talk to us about the podcast. What's it called? What's the aim of it? Who are you going to be talking to? Because we'd love to kind of share some information about that as well, because I'm sure it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, I'm not as organized as you guys are. I've had about a year break from the podcast, but you can still check out the first season. And it's called The Lost Tapes. And I basically talk to people about their experience of loss and grief, losing someone they've loved or something that they loved. And I started it because I realized that there's not like this 10-point plan, because I'm very, show me how to do it and I'll get it done. So when I'm Googling, how'd you get over losing your dad? And there's like 55 different answers. I'm like, this is stressing me out. So yeah, I just thought if I talk to as many people as I can, then hopefully one person will say something that can help someone else. Because my story might not help anyone, because they're like, well, I hate counselling and I can't talk to anyone in my family because I hate them and all this other stuff. And another person's story might be better, or my story might be perfect for someone and someone else's might be awful for them. So yeah, just speaking to a wide variety of people about their experiences and trying to pick up little nuggets here and there. And also I think it's great when people have been through or are currently going through something mad and they're still alive and still trying, because person in their room right now, wherever they are thinking of giving up, it kind of gives them hope that if someone else can do it, then I can keep going. Do you know what I mean?
That has been my purpose with this podcast all along. It's showing that there is a future in grief, even when it feels like there isn't. There are people that have experienced something similar to you, and they're living a really beautiful life, even though some days are really, really shit. It does get a little bit easier.
Yeah, it gives you hope, and hope. As long as you've got hope, you have a reason to live.
That's it. I love that. As long as I'm going to write that down, actually.
Can you, if you make that a lyric, can I copyright it, please? Thank you. Just finally, because honestly, this has been genuinely incredible. I don't say that lightly, Isaac. The way you speak, the person you are, and the things that you've said they've made me think a lot, and I thank you for that. Just finally, can you tell us about your dad a little bit more? Create the image, tell us who he was and what he meant to you. And can you give us a favourite memory you have of him, please?
Yeah, sure. It's powerful. So my dad was a selfless man who worked really, really hard for his family. I think that was his way of showing that he loved us. Got 25 days annual leave a year. Only probably took 18 every year because he actually loved going to work. Don't know whether it's because he wanted to work hard for us or whether it's because he just didn't like us much. But yeah, he's always, if you need a lift to the airport, he's always first to offer. He won't even ask you for petrol money. He's just very selfless. Loved his family. He was a man of a few words, but loved to laugh. So I had a great group of friends. And he's the kind of person that not many people could find to say a bad word about. So he's an absolute legend. And my favorite memory of my dad is he's very shy. So he didn't really like coming to any of my shows because he was scared that people would know that he's my dad and he didn't want any attention. But I did a show at the Hackney Empire quite a few years ago, probably about 2013, 2014. And he came along and he was so shy to say that he was my dad that one of the film crew interviewed him after, and he just pretended like he was just a random guy that bought a ticket to come and see me. So, hey guy, he's all right, man. I've liked his music for a while and that kind of stuff. And I've got it on DVD now, and I watch it every now and then. But yeah, he's great, man.
What did you say? You watch it when?
I got it on DVD, the recording. So I watch it every now and again to give me a little bit of a laugh.
I love that so much.
What was his name, Isaac?
Oh, his name was Charles Niboy Borkwe, and Niboy is a Ghanaian name, and it means firstborn. And so I gave my son the same middle name. So
I love that.
Well. What an incredible tribute that is. Yeah. And what a nice memory as well. Amazing that you've got that on DVD. Like the so privilege funny. Of your position.
He is not my son.
But you can actually watch that back. You can watch a funny moment back. I love that. And I bet every time you watch it, it brings him to life again.
Yeah, it does, man. And that's the great thing about, because I'm in two minds, you know, with like the social media age. Part of me is just like, if you come to a concert or you're having a good time out with your friends, just put your phone away and just enjoy the moment. But then on the other hand, I'm like, actually, I'm quite glad that I got my phone out and filmed some stuff because I've got all those memories now. So yeah, it's great.
It's a catch-22, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isaac, it has been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us on the Dead Parent Club podcast and taking the time out to share your story and offer some pearls of wisdom to our listeners.
Yeah, it's going to be so useful.
I appreciate it. I'll wear green next time because both of you got green on.
Oh, we have, haven't we? Yeah, you didn't get the memo, did you? We'll let you know. Thank you, as always, for listening to the Dead Parent Club podcast. And remember, if you've got any suggestions or there's anything at all that you'd like us to cover, you can get in touch.
Yep, don't forget you can email us at hello@deadparentclub.co.uk or find us on Instagram at Dead Parent Club Podcast, and we're on Facebook and Twitter as well.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.